The studio lights feel hotter than usual, almost suffocating. The cameras glide silently across the set of The View, capturing smiles that don't quite reach the eyes. Something is off. The audience senses it. The hosts feel it. And in just a few seconds, the entire room is about to change. Before we get into this, the narrator's voice drops low, almost whispering. Make sure you subscribe to Talk Battles, hit that like button, and tell us in the comments, whose side are you on? The applause fades, and there she is, Teyana Taylor, walking onto the stage with a calm confidence that feels almost too controlled. Her presence is magnetic, but tonight, there's something else, something sharper behind her eyes. She greets the hosts politely, exchanging brief smiles, but when she sits down, her posture is firm, grounded, like she's bracing for impact. Whoopi leans forward slightly, her tone measured but probing. Teyana, you've had an incredible year. New creative projects, directing, producing, you're building something powerful. But people are also talking about your recent comments on the industry. Some say you've been critical. A soft murmur ripples through the audience. Teyana tilts her head, her lips forming a slight smile. But it doesn't feel warm. Critical? Or honest? The room tightens. Sunny shifts in her seat. Joy raises an eyebrow. Sarah glances toward Whoopi, sensing the shift in energy. Whoopi doesn't back down. She's been here before. Decades of live television have taught her how to hold her ground. Honesty is one thing, she says calmly. But when you call out the system, the people in it, it can come off as dismissive. Some might say ungrateful. That word lands heavy. Teyana's smile fades. For a split second, there's silence, thick, uncomfortable, electric. Ungrateful? Teyana repeats, her voice quieter now, but sharper. You think speaking my truth about my experiences is ungrateful? The audience leans forward. This isn't a casual interview anymore. Whoopi crosses her hands, her expression steady. I'm saying, there's a way to approach these conversations without tearing things down. Teyana exhales slowly, her gaze dropping for a moment, then rising again, stronger. You know what's funny, she says. People always want you to be grateful, but they don't want to hear what you went through to get there. A ripple of applause breaks out from the audience. Joy jumps in, trying to redirect. Let's not forget, though, you've had success. Major success. Music, acting, now directing. And I worked for every single bit of it, Teyana cuts in, her voice rising just slightly. Every late night. Every moment of being overlooked. Every time I had to fight to be seen, to be heard. Her words hit like waves, building momentum. Sarah leans forward, softer in tone. Can you tell us about one of those moments? Something that really stayed with you. For the first time, Teyana pauses, and something shifts. The intensity gives way to something deeper. More personal. There was a time, she begins slowly, when I poured everything into a project, my heart, my vision, my story. And when it was done, they tried to reshape it. Change it. Like my voice didn't matter. The audience quiets completely now. I remember sitting there, she continues, her voice trembling just slightly, thinking, is this what it's always going to be? Me fighting just to exist in my own work. Whoopi watches her closely now, not as an opponent, but as someone recognizing something familiar. But here's the thing, Teyana says, her tone rising again, reclaiming strength. I didn't stop. I turned that frustration into fuel. That's why I'm directing now. That's why I'm creating my own lane. Applause erupts again, louder this time. Sunny nods. And your latest project, it's getting a lot of attention. People are calling it bold, unapologetic. Teyana smiles again, this time with genuine pride. Because it is. It's mine. Whoopi leans back slightly, her expression softening, but only for a moment. But when you speak out the way you do, she says, her tone careful but firm, you're also influencing younger artists. Do you think there's a responsibility there? And just like that, the tension snaps back into place. Teyana's eyes lock onto Whoopi's. There is a responsibility, she says. To tell the truth. The audience gasps softly. To show them that they don't have to shrink themselves to fit into someone else's expectations, she continues. That they can demand respect. That they can walk away from situations that don't honor them. Joy interjects, a hint of skepticism in her voice. But not everyone has that luxury. Teyana turns toward her immediately. It's not a luxury, it's a choice. A hard one. A scary one. But a choice. The room is fully divided now, some nodding, some uneasy. Whoopi leans forward again, her voice lower, more intense. And what about the people who helped you get there? The ones who gave you those opportunities. Teyana doesn't hesitate. I'm grateful for every opportunity, she says. But gratitude doesn't mean silence. The words hang in the air like a challenge. The audience erupts, some cheering, others stunned into silence. The cameras zoom in on Whoopi's face. For the first time, there's a flicker of something unexpected, not anger, not frustration, but recognition. She's been here before. On the other side of a moment like this. The energy in the room shifts again, but this time it's deeper, more personal. And as the tension builds, as the conversation teeters on the edge of something even bigger, one thing becomes clear. This isn't just an interview anymore. It's a confrontation. And it's only just beginning. The air in the studio doesn't cool down. It thickens. What began as a tense exchange now feels like something far more personal, far more layered. The applause from Teyana's last statement fades, but the energy it left behind lingers like a storm waiting to break. Whoopi sits back for a moment, studying Teyana carefully. There's no rush in her response now, just a quiet, measured pause. The kind that makes everyone in the room hold their breath. You're right, Whoopi finally says, her voice calm but carrying weight. Gratitude doesn't mean silence. She nods slowly. But there's a difference between speaking your truth and burning bridges that you might still need. The audience murmurs again, some nodding, others shifting uncomfortably. Teyana leans forward this time. Not defensive, but grounded. Focused. What if those bridges were never built for me to cross in the first place? That lands. Hard. A few people in the audience clap instinctively, while others glance around, unsure how to react. The tension is no longer surface level. It's philosophical now. Personal. Generational. Sunny watches closely, sensing the depth of what's unfolding. It sounds like, she says carefully, you're not just talking about your career. You're talking about your identity in the industry. About being seen on your own terms. Teyana nods slowly. Exactly. She pauses, her eyes scanning the audience briefly before returning to the table. I've had moments, she continues, where I felt like I had to dim parts of myself just to make other people comfortable. Whether it was my sound, my image, even the stories I wanted to tell. Her voice tightens slightly. And every time I did that, I lost a piece of what made me me. The room goes quiet again. Joy exhales, folding her arms slightly. But isn't that part of the process? Compromise? Every artist, every performer. No, Teyana cuts in, not loudly but firmly. Compromise is collaboration. What I experienced wasn't collaboration. It was control. That word shifts everything. Whoopi's eyes narrow just slightly, not in anger, but in recognition of the gravity of what's being said. Control is a strong word, she responds, her tone even. And it carries implications. Teyana meets her gaze without flinching. So does silence. The audience reacts immediately, some clapping, some audibly gasping. There's no going back now. Sarah leans in, her voice softer, trying to anchor the conversation. Teyana, can you take us back to a moment where you realized you had to take control of your own narrative? A turning point. Teyana inhales deeply. And for the first time since she walked onto that stage, her expression shifts. Not just intensity, but vulnerability. It was after a performance, she begins. One of the biggest moments of my career. I gave everything I had, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And afterward, instead of celebrating, I found myself in a room full of people telling me what I should have done differently. Her jaw tightens slightly. They picked apart everything. My look, my movement, my choices. And I remember thinking, she pauses, her voice lowering, if this isn't enough, then what is? The silence in the studio becomes almost unbearable. I went home that night, she continues, and I didn't feel proud. I felt erased. A few audience members nod, visibly moved. Whoopi shifts in her seat now, her expression no longer guarded but thoughtful. I know that feeling, she says quietly. The entire table turns toward her. There's a subtle shift, like the conversation has just crossed into deeper territory. There were moments in my career, Whoopi continues, where I was told I didn't fit, that I was too much of one thing, not enough of another, that I needed to change to survive in this business. Teyana watches her closely now. And you know what? Whoopi adds, her voice firming slightly. Sometimes, I did change, because at the time, I thought that was the only way forward. The audience listens intently, caught between two generations, two perspectives, both rooted in truth. But that doesn't mean I stopped being myself, Whoopi says. It means I learned how to navigate a system that wasn't built for me. Teyana leans back slightly, considering this. But what if I don't want to navigate it? She asks. What if I want to rebuild it? That question hits like thunder. The audience reacts instantly. Cheers, applause, a few stunned expressions. Joy shakes her head slightly, half smiling in disbelief. That's a big mission. Teyana doesn't smile. Why does it have to be? She asks. Why does changing the system feel unrealistic? But enduring it feels normal. Sunny nods slowly, clearly absorbing the weight of that statement. Whoopi exhales, leaning forward again, but this time, there's no confrontation in her posture. Just curiosity. And how do you plan to do that? She asks. Because talking about change is one thing, building it is another. Teyana's eyes light up, not with defiance, but with purpose. By creating spaces where artists don't have to fight to be heard, she says. By telling stories that aren't filtered through someone else's lens. By showing the next generation that they don't have to wait for permission. The audience breaks into applause again, this time more unified. And that's what your new projects are about? Sarah asks gently. Teyana nods. Every single one of them. She leans forward slightly, her energy shifting from defensive to passionate. I'm working on films that reflect real experiences. Real emotions. I'm building a platform for voices that don't always get a seat at the table. She pauses. Because I know what it feels like to be outside that room, knocking. Whoopi watches her closely, really watching now. And now you're inside the room, Whoopi says. Teyana's response is immediate. Exactly, she says. And I'm not closing the door behind me. The audience erupts again. But even as the applause fills the studio, there's an undercurrent still running beneath it all. Something unresolved. Because this isn't just about agreement anymore. It's about perspective, experience, and the unspoken question hanging in the air between them. Is change built from within the system, or by breaking it apart? Whoopi leans back slowly, her expression unreadable. Teyana sits tall, unwavering. The hosts exchange glances. And the audience, caught in the middle of something bigger than a talk show segment, waits. Because the conversation isn't over. Not even close. In fact, it's about to get even more intense. The applause slowly fades, but the energy doesn't settle. It sharpens. What was once a conversation has now turned into something deeper. Something that feels like a collision of worlds. Two perspectives. Two generations. Two ways of surviving the same industry. Now standing face to face under the same lights. Teyana sits still, her hands folded, her expression calm. But her eyes are alert, alive, ready. Across from her, Whoopi studies her with a quiet intensity, as if trying to understand not just her words, but the fire behind them. For a brief moment, no one speaks. And somehow, that silence says everything. Then Joy breaks it. But let me ask you this, she says, leaning forward slightly, her tone more direct now. You're talking about changing the system, rebuilding it, creating something new. But doesn't that come with risk? Real risk. Careers can stall. Opportunities can disappear. Teyana doesn't hesitate. They already do, she replies. The answer is immediate. Unfiltered. Honest. A ripple moves through the audience. They disappear when you don't fit the mold, she continues. They disappear when you say no. They disappear when you ask for more than what they're willing to give you. Her voice rises, not in anger, but in truth. So if I'm going to lose opportunities either way, I'd rather lose them standing for something. The audience reacts, this time louder, more emotional. Some people are clapping. Others are visibly moved. Sunny nods slowly. That's powerful, she says. But I think what people are hearing is fearlessness. And not everyone feels they can afford to be fearless. Teyana turns toward her, softer now. I'm not fearless, she says. I'm scared all the time. That admission shifts the energy again. But I've learned something, she continues. Courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about deciding that something else matters more. The audience falls completely silent again. Sarah's voice comes in gently. What matters more to you? Teyana pauses. And this time, when she speaks, it's not just about her career anymore. My legacy, she says quietly. What I leave behind. The doors I open. The stories I tell. Her voice strengthens. I don't want to just be remembered for what I did. I want to be remembered for what I changed. That line hits deep. Even the hosts seem momentarily taken aback. Whoopi shifts slightly, her posture relaxing. Not in surrender, but in reflection. There's a different energy in her now. Less resistance, more contemplation. You know, Whoopi says slowly, there was a time when I felt exactly like that. The audience turns its attention back to her. I wanted to change everything, she continues. The roles, the narratives, the expectations, all of it. And in some ways I did. She pauses. But in other ways, the system changed me right back. That lands with a different kind of weight. Teyana watches her closely. Do you regret that? Whoopi exhales, a faint smile crossing her face, but it's layered. Complex. No, she says. Because every step I took, even the compromises, led me here. And from here, I can still make an impact. Teyana leans forward slightly, her gaze unwavering. But what if here isn't enough anymore? She asks. The room tightens again. Joy lets out a small breath, almost like she's bracing for what comes next. Whoopi's eyes lock onto Teyana's. And what if tearing everything down leaves people with nothing? Whoopi counters. There it is. The core of it all. Not just disagreement, but philosophy. Teyana shakes her head slightly. I'm not talking about tearing everything down, she says. I'm talking about rebuilding what's broken. And who decides what's broken? Joy jumps in. The people who've been living with it, Teyana replies instantly. The audience erupts again, this time louder than before. Some even stand clapping. The energy in the room is reaching a peak now. Sunny raises her hand slightly, trying to steady the conversation. I think what we're witnessing right now, she says, isn't just a debate, it's a moment. A real, raw exchange between experience and evolution. Sarah nods. And both of those things can exist at the same time. But even as they try to balance the moment, the tension between Whoopi and Teyana remains. Unresolved, electric. Whoopi leans forward again, her voice quieter now, but somehow more powerful. You remind me of myself, she says. The room stills. But you're also stepping into a world that doesn't change overnight, she continues. And sometimes pushing too hard can push people away. Teyana's expression softens, just slightly. Maybe they need to be pushed, she says. A beat. Because comfort hasn't changed anything. The audience reacts again, cheers mixing with stunned silence. And then something unexpected happens. Whoopi smiles. Not a dismissive smile. Not a defensive one. A real one. Small but genuine. Well, she says, leaning back, I can't argue with passion like that. A light ripple of laughter moves through the audience, breaking the tension just enough to let everyone breathe again. But the moment isn't over. Because even as the surface softens, the depth of what's been said remains. Two women, two journeys, two truths. Neither fully right, neither fully wrong. Just different, and yet somehow connected. The cameras pan across the audience, faces reflecting everything from admiration to contemplation. This wasn't just entertainment. This was something real, something that stays with you. As the segment begins to wind down, Sarah glances toward the producers off camera, then back at the table. We're almost out of time, she says softly. But I think this conversation, it's one that doesn't really end here. Teyana nods. Whoopi nods. And for a brief moment, there's a quiet understanding between them. Not agreement, but respect. Still, one final question lingers in the air. Unspoken, unresolved. And as the cameras continue rolling, as the audience waits, as the tension settles into something quieter, but no less powerful, it becomes clear. The aftermath of this moment is going to be just as explosive as the moment itself. The lights don't dim, but something else does. The intensity that once crackled through the air now settles into a quieter, heavier presence. Not gone, just transformed. The kind of silence that follows a storm, not empty, but full of everything that just happened. Sarah offers a closing smile, her voice warm but careful. Thank you, Teyana, for being here and for being so open. The audience applauds, this time not explosive but deep. Respectful. Thoughtful. Teyana nods, her expression composed, but her eyes still carrying that same fire. Thank you for having me. Whoopi glances at her. Just for a second longer than usual. There's something unspoken there now. Not tension, not quite agreement either. Something more complex. A quiet acknowledgement. As the cameras begin to pull back, the hosts exchange their usual closing remarks, but the rhythm feels different. Slightly off. Like everyone knows this wasn't just another segment. Because it wasn't. The show cuts to commercial. But the moment doesn't end. It spills. Backstage, the atmosphere shifts again. The polished smiles fade, replaced with something more human. Producers whisper urgently, assistants move quickly, and phones begin lighting up. notifications flooding in faster than anyone can process. Clips from the segment are already circulating. Short cuts of Teyana saying, "Gratitude doesn't mean silence." Another of Whoopi responding, "And sometimes the system changes you right back." Within minutes, social media explodes. Fans take sides instantly. Some praise Teyana, calling her fearless, unapologetic, a voice for a new generation refusing to be boxed in. Others stand firmly with Whoopi, respecting her experience, her perspective, her understanding of the industry's realities. And then there are those caught in between, seeing truth in both. Back in the dressing room, Teyana sits in front of the mirror. The noise from outside feels distant now. Muted. She stares at her reflection, not with doubt, but with reflection. Her phone buzzes. Message after message. Support. Criticism. Headlines already forming narratives. She exhales slowly, placing the phone down. For a moment, she's alone with her thoughts. Did I say too much? A quiet voice in her mind whispers. But just as quickly, another voice rises. No, I said enough. There's a knock at the door. She turns, and there stands Whoopi. No cameras. No audience. Just two women without the stage between them. For a second, neither speaks. Then Whoopi steps inside, closing the door behind her. "That was something," she says, a faint smile forming. Teyana lets out a small breath, almost a laugh. "Yeah, it was." Another pause. But this one feels different. Lighter. "You didn't hold back," Whoopi adds. Teyana meets her gaze. "I couldn't." Whoopi nods slowly, understanding more than she says. "I get that." She walks a little further into the room, her tone softer now. "You know, when I was coming up, I had moments like that. Moments where I wanted to say everything. Shake everything. Change everything overnight." Teyana listens closely. "And sometimes I did," Whoopi continues. "But other times, I learned when to push and when to pause." Teyana tilts her head slightly. "Do you ever wish you pushed more?" Whoopi smiles again, but this time it's more reflective. "Sometimes," she admits. "And sometimes, I'm glad I didn't." That answer lingers. Not definitive, but honest. Teyana nods slowly. "I guess I'm still figuring that part out." Whoopi chuckles softly. "We all are." Another silence, but this one feels like peace. Before leaving, Whoopi pauses at the door. "Just don't lose yourself in the process," she says. Teyana's response is quiet, but certain. "That's the one thing I won't compromise." Whoopi gives a small nod, and then she's gone. The door closes, and with it, the moment becomes something else entirely. Outside, the world is still reacting. News outlets pick up the story. Headlines flash across screens. Explosive debate on daytime TV. Teyana Taylor challenges industry norms live on air. Whoopi Goldberg responds with veteran perspective. Clips rack up millions of views within hours. Comment sections flood with opinions. Some call it a clash. Others call it a conversation that needed to happen. Back on set, the hosts regroup quietly. There's less chatter than usual. Even Joy seems more reflective. Sunny scrolls through her phone, shaking her head slightly at the overwhelming response. "That struck a nerve," she says. Sarah nods. "Because it was real." Whoopi sits silently for a moment, then finally speaks. "Yeah," she says. "It was." Her tone isn't defensive. It isn't dismissive. It's thoughtful, as if even she is still processing it all. And maybe that's what made this moment different. It wasn't about winning. It wasn't about proving who was right. It was about something deeper. Truth meeting truth. Experience meeting evolution. And neither one backing down. As the day fades and the noise continues to grow online, one thing becomes undeniable. This wasn't just a TV moment. It was a cultural spark. A reminder that conversations like these uncomfortable, emotional, raw, are the ones that stay with us. The ones that challenge us. The ones that push us to think. And now it's your turn. What did you think of this intense exchange? Was Teyana right to speak so boldly, or did Whoopi's perspective carry more weight? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your take. And if you want more powerful, dramatic, and unforgettable stories like this one, make sure you subscribe to Talk Battles, hit that like button, and stay tuned. Because the next story might be even more explosive.